Hey everyone, I wanted to do a update review video on my bike. I did a review back in May, and I had a lot of questions. People asked me what I did to it, what I thought about it after riding it for a while, whether I thought it was worth the money. So I figured it was worthwhile to take the time to do an upgrade video on everything I've done to it. I've kind of broken it down here, what I put onto it, and the expenses I have into it. So, but I'll do a quick rundown on everything I have. Right now I paid $750. That was after shipping on Bikes Direct, and that's how the bike came stock. And I rode the bike stock plenty of times. It did fine stock, but there was, a couple little things, especially after upgrading it now, that I think were definitely worth the money. First thing I did was I found some tires on eBay. So I got these Maxxis 3-inch tires, and they were definitely a game changer. They grip through just about anything. And then I also did a tubeless conversion on them, so you can buy the tape and the sealant and the valve stems, which is what I did. And now I run about 20 psi in these tires, and they can go through, they can climb anything, they go through everything. I love these tires. I took my brother-in-law out, and poor guy had my other bike and a lot skinnier tires with tubes in it, and some of the terrain was just tough to go through. So this is definitely a game changer. I had to modify this. So in the last video I talked about upgrading the shock and whether I was going to be able to fit it in here, and the difference is the shock is 15 millimeters bigger than the stock one. The stock one is a spring shock, 150 millimeters from bolt to bolt, and there's not a lot of options for that size. So what I ended up doing was drilling a hole here. I actually installed the shock right here, and what it does is it pushes the frame back right here just a little bit, and it messes everything up. It changes the geometry of the shift cables and the travel of the suspension. It was horrible. So I ended up measuring up around 15 millimeters here and putting the shock in here. So the shock's kind of close to right here. I don't typically recommend drilling into your bike to put this in, but that being said, that it was a game changer on the way this bike rides. It handles so much better with this shock in the rear, and I do like that I can lock it out. This one is, you can get it on Amazon. It's the company is D&M, and the specific shock is A0Y36RC. Had a lot of good reviews, and so far I'm pleased with it. It actually really does work well. I ran around 150 psi in that, and it meets all of my needs. So that thing's pretty great. I changed the stem out. So this bike originally came with a 90 millimeter stem, and it was raised. I didn't particularly like that, especially when you're doing a lot of downhill. It's nice to have the handlebars a little closer to you, so I reduced that to a 60 millimeter stem. Might even go a tad shorter, but that was a game changer. I really like that. And then I bought this 120 millimeter RockShox air fork off of a coworker for $50. I've seen them online used, 150, 200 bucks. I'm not sure how much they are new. They're not cheap, but there's also aftermarket Amazon air shocks that you can buy, and they seem to have good reviews. I can't comment on how good they are, but putting an air shock in here really changed the game of the way the front suspension handled going down a lot of the downhill. I ran around 100 psi in this. I really like the lockout. I'll say the difference, my personal experience between spring suspension and air suspension, is the spring suspension for me is just a little bouncier, whereas the air shock seems to be absorbing. It really just absorbs the downhill. So I am very pleased with these two upgrades, and if you can swing that, I think that made a difference in the game. One of the downsides of the bike, I bought a dropper post, $100, love it. If you can get a dropper post, it's going to make a big difference in the downhill. The problem with this bike is it's got a 27.2 post, which really limits your options as to the kind of dropper post you can get. A lot of the nicer ones, which if you're going to spend the money, you can get, the nicer ones have hydraulic, a lot more options. This one, it's called Kind Shock, and it was one of the only ones I could find for this bike. So that's kind of one of the downsides, but for what it is, it works fine. It lowers when I need it. It comes up when I need it. I routed it right here, so it's in between my shifter and my brakes, and it works just fine. But I would have liked to have known that this was actually kind of small. So that was one of the downsides of the bike, and then having to drill here was one of the downsides of the bike. Put some new pedals on it. That's a cheap upgrade. Didn't cost much. Total, I've got $1,155 into the bike. very pleased with it. There's black diamonds. I've been running this down. In fact, after this video, I'll post some of the stuff I run it down, and you can watch and see for yourself the stuff I've gone down. This bike, it handles it just fine. I will say, and it's probably because it's a plus bike, it is a little heavy. So going off some of the jumps, I feel like I don't have as much control. It's probably my lack of experience as a rider, but I also am learning the mountain bike. I'm getting better at it, and this bike is definitely helping me. It was fun putting all these parts on here. I learned so much about bikes. I'm a BMW mechanic, so I'm kind of mechanical with my hands. So it was fun for me to transform this bike into what I did. And also, I've crashed. You can see my cable rubs up here, but I've got marks here. I went to Palmer Park here in Colorado Springs, fell on rocks. I actually broke the rear derailleur. I don't know if you can actually see that in the video there. You can kind of see it. I'll move it over a little bit. But the rear derailleur right here, I fell on a rock and completely broke it. So I had to replace that, so I upgraded it. The drivetrain was kind of generic. It had a Shimano Atlas, so I ended up putting the Shimano DR on here. It wasn't actually that much. It was like $45-50 for that. And I had to replace the rear hanger because I bent that as well. So and you can get on Bikestruck and you can replace those pretty easy. And they put that on here so that you don't bend your frame, and you can still just replace the components. So that's nice. So I did upgrade that. That was an additional like $50. You don't have to do that. But I broke mine. I had no choice. I will say, after doing some research, and it just depends on what you're looking for, if you're willing to put the money into it, there is a bike online, and I haven't ridden it, but it seems to have good reviews, called the Caliber Boss Nut. And you can pick that thing up for, it looks like after taxes, for around $1,500. So you can see I've already got $1,100, almost $1,200 into this bike. For another $300, you could have one that's already got a 1x drivetrain on it. It's a frame you can definitely build into. It's got a bigger opening here for the dropper post. It's already, you don't have to modify your frame here. So if you're willing to drop an extra $300, that might be the way to go. If you're not wanting to upgrade anything and you want this bike just as it is, $750, it handled everything just fine as it was. It was just, I wanted to modify it, so I did. So just something to think about. But again, overall, I'm pleased with the bike. I'm pleased with the experience of building it up. And I plan to ride it for a while. Eventually, I'll probably give it to my son and buy something nicer. But I'd rather beat this bike up than get $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 bike down the road if I can never afford anything like that, and destroy that one like I've destroyed this one. I crash a lot, so that's how you learn. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, ask all the questions you want. I'll do my best to answer them. And thanks for watching. How you guys doing? How you doing? Oh yeah.